For council members, this evening, we received another attachment to the proclamation, the We the People Amendment Day, a fact sheet. It was sent along by the mayor's office. So I have added that to the agenda materials this evening if you want to take a look at that. So it was a non-action item. I didn't think it was substantive to add it.
Thanks, Marty. Do we have a quorum at the moment?
No, not yet.
Yeah, I'm counting to 6. I know Councilman Ramos will be
The only
absent.
one I've heard is Jesse.
Yeah, usually a couple of folks sign in about 2 seconds before we're ready to go. So we should be good.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Heather.
Hey, Heather.
Righty ho.
Hi, Libby.
More congratulations are due to you, Ms. Hart, for all your work at Habitat for Humanity.
Oh.
Article in the Missoulian. That's awesome.
Hey, yeah, I take no credit for it myself. It was the design team all in and of themselves. They were just fantastic. But thank you.
Great.
I will pass that along. On a different note, it was really cool to see Dave Strohmeyer's name in the New York Times.
Yeah, I bet he was pretty psyched about that too.
Talk about just a dream come true. I mean, that's just pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I will call the Missoula City Council meeting of January 25th, 2021 to order. I will note for the record that all council members are present with the exception of Mr. Ramos and Ms. Anderson. There are a variety of ways to participate in this webinar, and thank you for joining us via Zoom this evening. I will call for public comment several times during the course of the meeting. If you care to comment, please raise or lower your hand in the Zoom feature, and that will let me know that you wish to be recognized. I can enable your microphone at that point and recognize you, but you will need to unmute on your end. If you've joined us by telephone, you can raise and lower your hand by pressing *9 and mute and unmute using *6. And if you're participating by phone, I'll call on the last 4 digits of your phone number to recognize you. We have minutes of the meeting of January 11th. Without objection, they'll be approved. And seeing none, we'll move on to our schedule of committee meetings. Ms. Rabine.
Thanks, Mayor Ingen. This next week, we only have 2 committee meetings. They're also being held via Zoom webinar, just like this meeting is. You can find all of our virtual public meetings from the city's main website at www.ci.missoula.mt.us/webcasts, or a super fast way is to just Google the city of Missoula and hit that meetings button that's right down there below the big picture on our website. All of the information that you need to join one of these webinars is on the respective committee agenda on that page. Public Works Committee will meet this coming Wednesday, January 27th from 12:30 until 1:15. And Administration and Finance Committee will meet from 1:30 to 2:15. And once again, those meetings are both being held on Zoom webinar. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. I'll note for the record that Ms. Anderson has joined the meeting. Any changes to that committee schedule? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the public comment portion of our agenda. This is your opportunity to comment on items not elsewhere on the agenda this evening. We do have a number of attendees in the audience, and if any of you would care to comment on non-agenda items, this is your opportunity to do so. And seeing no hands raised there, I do recognize, oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Lose.
Yes, thank you. I'm here to speak in behalf of Move to Amend and the proclamation that we thank you for making, the annual We the People Amendment Proclamation. I would like to comment on that.
You certainly may. I'll actually be reading the proclamation in a little bit, Joe, and that may be the better time. And I recognize that some folks who have been part of this movement for a very long time have joined us this evening, and I'm happy to provide you opportunity to speak and appreciate that you've stuck with it as long as you have. So I'll get right back to you, Joe, as soon as we get to that proclamation.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no other general public comment this evening, we will move on to our consent agenda items here, generally approved unanimously in council committees. And we consider these items all at once on Monday evenings to save a little time. Ms. Rabine will read the list of these items aloud so that folks in the audience will know what we're considering. And we'll take comment on these items before we vote. Ms. Rabine.
Thanks, Mayor Egan. Tonight's consent, I can't talk tonight. Tonight's consent agenda has 7 items. And the first item is to ratify claims in the amount of $1,372,407.18 for checks that were dated January 19th of 2021. Number 2 is to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with Morrison Merrily Incorporated for the Momont Number 2 lift station and Harlequin Court water system improvement projects at a cost not to exceed $138,392. Number 3 is to approve claims in the amount of $523,418.99 for checks that are dated January 26th of 2021. Number 4 is to approve an amendment to the contract for the Caras Park Stormwater Outfall Phase 2 project with Morrison Merrily in an amount not to exceed $71,287 for Caras Park improvements. Number 5 is to appoint the following people to the Design Review Board. We're appointing Donald Briggs as an architect and Karen Slobod as a graphics, signage, and wayfinding, as well as alternate position for terms that begin February 1st, 2021 and end on January 31st of 2022. Appointing Ryan Smith as a landscape architect and urban designer, and Maria Chestnut is a licensed civil engineer, and Brian Topp, who's an architect, for terms that begin February 1st, 2021 through January 31st of 2023. And Levi Thane, who's an architect, and Brandon Prinsing, who's an architect, and Heather McMillan, who's a builder developer, for terms that begin on February 1st of 2021 through January 31st of 2024. Number 6 is to approve a resolution of intention to annex and incorporate within the boundaries of the city of Missoula, Montana, one certain parcel of land located on George Elmer Drive, north of the 44 Ranch and Flynn Ranch subdivisions, and legally described as parcel 8A of certificate of survey number 6109, and shown on Exhibit A, located in section 12, township 13, North Range 20, West Principal Meridian, Montana, and zone the property B2-2 community business based on the findings of fact and the staff report, and subject to the recommended conditions of annexation approval, setting a public hearing on the whole matter for February 22nd of 2021. And finally, number 7 is to confirm the mayor's appointment of Jake McNally to the Missoula Civic Television Advisory Commission for a term that begins immediately and expires on December 31st of 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. Any discussion or questions from council members this evening? All right, I see no hands up there. And sorry, taking me a minute to make an adjustment or two. And seeing no one in the audience who cares to comment, we will have a roll call vote.
Okay, on the consent agenda, Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Harp,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
Von Lossberg,
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your votes? That's 11 ayes and 1 absent.
And the consent agenda is approved. We have no comment this evening from commissions, boards, authorities, staff, or the community forum. We do have one special presentation in the form of a proclamation. Whereas on November 8th, 2011, 74.67% of Missoula voters passed referendum 7653, urging our state and federal elected officials to amend the United States Constitution to state that corporations are not human beings. And whereas on November 6, 2012, 74.9% of Montana voters passed Initiative 166, asserting that the people of Montana regard money as property, not speech, and that the people of Montana regard the rights under the United States Constitution as rights of human beings, not rights of corporations, and called for a United States constitutional amendment. And whereas the well-being of Missoula citizens is harmed with each passing year, that the constitutional amendment is delayed as our common good and our common wealth is being redirected on behalf of the few. And whereas the money that is overwhelming our elections and intimidating our candidates and elected officials makes it more and more difficult for the citizens of Missoula to protect the common good and our commonwealth. And whereas Missoula wishes to give evidence of our commitment every year until the United States Constitution is amended to say that corporations are not people and money is not speech, and the proposed We the People amendment most clearly states our intent. Now, therefore, I, John Engen, Mayor of the City of Missoula in the state of Montana, do hereby proclaim January 25th, 2021 as We the People Amendment Day in Missoula, Montana, and reaffirm our shared commitment. We have a number of folks participating in the webinar this evening who have been active in this movement for a very long time. I've had the opportunity over time to spend time in person with them, witness their passion and commitment to this, and I appreciate the fact that year in and year out, they're not giving up. And it turns out that sort of perseverance often pays off in this life. So thank you all for being here. And if any of the proponents would care to speak, to the proclamation, you are welcome to at this point. And Mr. Lowe's.
Thank you, Mayor Angus. Really appreciate your continued support with that proclamation. Usually a group of us arrive to stand in support, but this year with Zoom, we can't do that. But we know we have lots of support. Across the nation, almost 500,000 people, 476,785, have signed the petition that calls for the constitutional amendment. In Montana, we know we have a strong majority of voters behind us because our 2012 Citizens Initiative calling for the constitutional amendment passed with 75% of the voters and a majority in every county. And nationwide, these margins of support are still holding strong. It's a different kind of effort when you know you're in the majority. That is, the challenge we all face is to protect the commitment of Montanans, knowing that the money and corporations that were turned loose by Citizens United will work tirelessly to make us forget the history that tells us why this is so important to the future of our democracy. Yes, those forces would have us forget Montana's common history of domination by the company in our elections, in our press, in our working conditions, a domination that sent our state's common wealth into the hands of millionaires. This should sound familiar because history repeats itself. What the history books don't often say is the rest of the story, that Montanans in 1912 overcame that domination by passing their own Citizens Initiative, giving us the Montana Anti-Corruption Act that protected us for 98 years until the Supreme Court's Citizens United decision, to which Montanans responded, money isn't speech and corporations are not people. So it is important that Congress pass the We the People Amendment as quickly as possible and send it out to the states so our legislature and 3/4 of the states can ratify it. In the 2020 election cycle, campaign spending in federal elections doubled the amount spent in 2016 to an astounding $14 billion, that's with a D, dollars. Big money from corporations and increasingly from the ultra wealthy 1/10 of the top 1% is drowning out the voices of everyday people and making our votes count less than their dollars. And much of that money goes toward divisive sound bites that not only drive us crazy, but drive us apart. But we are moving forward. Missoula Moves to Amend now works closely with members and advocates from across the state as Montanans move to amend. With people from Superior to Grass Range, including Kalispell, Helena, Great Falls, Bozeman, and Miles City. In our legislature, we are again seeking to have a House resolution put forward and passed calling for the amendment. In Congress, the We the People Amendment has 75 co-sponsors and with a goal of reaching 110 co-sponsors in the House this session. We are hopeful that a companion bill will be introduced in the US Senate and that Montana's delegation will co-sponsor, given our history and the mandate of the 75% voters in our Citizens Initiative. We thank you again, Mayor Angus, for this proclamation that will help move this critical grassroots effort forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all for being here. Seeing no additional hands up with regard to the proclamation, we'll move on to the public hearing portion of our agenda. State law and our own council rules set guidelines for inviting community comment on a variety of issues in a formal way. And following a staff report on each of these, council and I will invite comment. Of course, during the pandemic, we are holding public hearings open for a week and voting the following week to ensure opportunities for participation, unless there is a requirement for final action the night of the public hearing. Tonight, one of these items requires final action, and that will be the, pardon me, Remington Flats subdivision. We have 2 public hearings this evening. I'm going to take these in reverse order so that Ms. Kinsey can take the rest of the evening off. I suspect her item will be a little bit briefer. She is bringing us the Parks and Recreation Master Fee Schedule for 2021. Ms. Kinsey. And Shirley, if you're talking, you're muted. Shirley, you're muted.
Unmute. Oh, there you go.
You're
Thank you for your patience.
Oh, no worries at all. You're ready to roll. We can see your screen and we can hear you both. So that's great.
Perfect. So Shirley Kinsey, Missoula Parks and Recreation. This is the public process we undertake each year to review and adopt the master fee schedule. And this document is essentially the foundation of all the fees associated with recreation facility rentals and reservations, permits, and admission fees, and some programs. So the process includes, normally I send out a summary memo to all the user groups. And normally we have meetings with the user groups, but we did not have meetings this year. And we have very few fee changes. So I didn't get any feedback from any of the user groups regarding the changes we are proposing. So the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board adopted unanimously the proposed changes. The County Park Board and Trails reviewed the document. We reviewed it at the Park and Conservation Committee as well. So the proposed changes include a statement that we shall retain the ability to adjust fees and policies during emergency situations such as a pandemic, and update the Parks and Recreation Board of those temporary policies and fee adjustments as needed. We found this last year to be extremely challenging, and some of the things that we normally do just didn't work. The second change is an adjustment to intermittent wage for our intermittent staff from $16.75 to $17.25, and that is a 3% increase. It only affects those wages that are called out separately in the fee document. So that includes after 6 o'clock at softball tournaments and on the multi-use field on the synthetic turf. In section 1.10, Big Sky High School opted to not renew their special PE activity rates. And so that section has been deleted. In section 2, special events in parks, we added a permit for smaller groups. We got a lot of feedback that our one size fits all didn't. And so we opted to do an hourly rate for smaller groups. 10 or less nonprofit for $10 can have a permit for $10 an hour, and for-profit business $15 an hour for 10 or less people. I think this is going to help out a lot of the fitness groups that are using our parks and trails and for their businesses and their programs. And then lastly, section 3.7, the urban forestry. For 2021, there'll be a moratorium on the cost share and memorial tree program. And they hope to kick the program, a revised program, back off in either fall of this year or spring of next year. And that is it.
Wow, Ms. Kinsey, that is the shortest
I know.
report I've heard from you in these many years. Thank you. With that, I will open the public hearing, and if anyone would care to comment, this is your opportunity. I'm sorry, I just need to look at my participant list here. Right, I see no one interested in commenting. This public hearing will, however, remain open until council takes final action at its next regular meeting, and there are a variety of ways to comment. Those are all enumerated on the website and on our agendas as well. So that remains open until council takes final action. Our second public hearing this evening, thank you, Shirley.
Thank
Our
you. And Marty, you might have to shut my screen share off. Sorry.
Already done. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
I apologize. Any council members have questions or comments? All right, fair enough. Thanks again, Shirley.
Thanks.
Second public hearing this evening is on a phased development, Remington Flats subdivision phase 1. Our staff report this evening comes from Mr. DeGrandpre.
Evening, Mayor Engen and councilors. I'll share my screen. Can you see that?
We can.
Fabulous. Okay. Well, again, good evening. This is the Remington Flats major subdivision phase development review for phase 1. This is an action item on your schedule tonight, as Mayor Engen described. The property itself, the overall property, is 20 acres in size. It's located just north of the 44 Ranch subdivision. Chuckwagon Drive is planned to run up the west boundary. There are 2 accesses from the 44 Ranch subdivision, Tenderfoot and Riata. And then ultimately, as I'll show you here shortly, the property and the streets are proposed to access and continue on to the east and also to the north in future developments that are not related to this subdivision, but that we're hoping can connect. The zoning on the property is, well, the property is located within the city limits, of course. The zoning is RT 5.4 residential with the Remington Flats Neighborhood Character Overlay District, so those rules apply. The overall project itself consists of 152 residential lots, again on 20 acres. There are 7 phases that are proposed. The property was annexed. You granted preliminary plat approval, and the zoning was applied back in September and October of last year. This is the first phase shown in pink here along the southern edge. Again, so the plan is for construction traffic to build out the subdivision to come in from a new extension of Chuckwagon Drive along the southwestern boundary. This would be a new street called Remington that I mentioned will connect, or is proposed to connect off to the east. This is an existing city street in Remington, or sorry, in 44 Ranch. Here's another one that residents, when this is built out, could use to head down to Mullen. This is the location again of phase 1 in relation to the overall property. The lots range in size. They're all planned for residential use. They range in size from just under 2,000 square feet to just under 5,200 square feet in size. Landscape boulevards and sidewalks are proposed along all street frontages. In terms of parkland, cash in lieu of parkland was approved for the subdivision by City Council. And in this case, based on the net lotted acres, in other words, area not located in streets and sidewalks, 0.25 acres of cash in lieu of parkland or to be deposited within the city under the city's policies. So phase development is kind of a funny animal. You know, the subdivider comes in with an overall phase development plan and goes through an extensive preliminary approval process. Then under state law, they have to come back in for your review to see if any conditions have changed, to see if there are any new impacts under our primary review criteria for subdivisions. And so that's really your purview when a new phase comes in. So in October of 2020, council approved the preliminary plat for Remington Flats in 7 phases, subject to 25 conditions. And those conditions, of course, apply throughout the life of this subdivision. And this is the first phase to move forward with final plat. State law, Montana Code Annotated 763617-4, says that the governing body must hold a public hearing on each phase and determine whether there are any new primary criteria impacts. It's funny language, but that's what the law says. And if so, or if there's new information that comes to light, that council has the authority then to apply new conditions to a phase. And the idea is that phases under Montana law can extend over a 20-year period. A phase development can extend over a 20-year period. So over time, there may be things that, groundwater issues may arise, traffic impacts may arise that weren't there, 15 years ago, et cetera. So this gives you the authority to apply new conditions if necessary. In this case, this is the first phase. Again, the developer submitted notice on December 15th that they would like to move forward with phase 1. There's only a 30 working day review period. And so the deadline is January 29th, which makes this an action item tonight. Action has to be taken, of course, within that 30 working day review period. The primary review criteria that I mentioned are standard subdivision primary review criteria under state law and our local regulations. They're detailed impacts or potential impacts are detailed extensively in the original staff report from the fall. And then also we took another look at it in the staff report that was provided for this particular phase. And they are, as you can see before you, your standard public health and safety, natural environment, wildlife habitat, compliance with survey requirements and subdivision laws, etc. So when we receive an application like this for phase development, we reach out to agency personnel, different agencies within the cities. So for example, parks, engineering, and also fire and others. In this case, there are no changes that are proposed to this phase. It's 100% in line with the preliminary plat that you saw in October. No regulations have changed that would impact this phase. And staff and agency personnel did not indicate any concerns or any reason that there ought to be any different conditions added. We have received one comment from John Mofat that's in the packet. It's available on eScribe. He has several comments that focus around a number of items. He may be here tonight and can speak for himself, but anyway, you saw his comment, I'm sure, in the on eScribe. Parks is a big issue, I think. He suggested, or he was questioning whether, an area of this size with this density of development, he's thinking that a park ought to be required. I think that decision, from my perspective, that decision was made back in the fall. Now I believe you've kind of locked yourself in unless certain conditions, changing conditions have arrived or arisen. You've decided that cash and lieu was the appropriate way to go. So in any event, you may hear additional public comment tonight. And then you do have a recommendation of approval for phase 1 of the Remington Flats subdivision based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law and the staff report. It's subject to all 25 of the conditions of approval from back in October. And that concludes my report, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeGrandpre. We will then open the public hearing. Once again, this is the opportunity, the only opportunity before council takes action. As I look at our participant list, I do not see any public comment this evening, so I will close the public hearing and take questions from council members. And seeing none of those, Mr. Hess.
Thanks, Mayor. I move that we approve phase one of Remington Flats subdivision based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff report, and subject to the conditions of approval at the time of preliminary plat approval of the subdivision. And may I speak to the motion?
Mr. Hess.
So I'm going to support the motion for a number of reasons. First of all, this is somewhat of a pro forma action. This is something that is following the approval that we gave for the subdivision, which was considered and had a public hearing and weighed the impacts and so on and so forth. And so this is, as Mr. de Grand Prix indicated, this is not an opportunity to open up new cans of worms and rehash issues that were decided in the subdivision process. And so a small number of months, 2-3 months have passed since we approved the subdivision, and nothing has really materially changed. And so I think it's our obligation to approve this as it is. It fits the requirements of the subdivision. It fits our growth policy. It fits all of our guiding documents. And most importantly, it meets the criteria that we need to look at tonight to approve it. I do want to say that we're in sort of an awkward adolescence phase in the Mullen Build area and the Swatipcane planning area, where we have projects that have come forth that were approved under a different set of regulations, and they are coming forward over the next weeks and months and years in various phases, new phases of this subdivision, phases of other subdivisions, another subdivision coming forth in a few weeks or a month or so that was submitted under the old regulations. We need to have our eye on the future of what we're trying to do as far as implementing the goals of the Swatipcane master plan, and to implement the goals of the Mullen Build grant. But we can't rehash what we have already decided on and what was submitted under what was legal. So, to the extent that we can steer things to meet the goals of the master plan, excellent. If we get something that comes in that meets our old regs and is maybe not quite what we want moving forward, that's something we're going to have to just continue to address. So all that said, I think the Remington Flats subdivision is a nice subdivision. I think it's an appropriate place for cash in lieu. It is a short distance from a park that is about the size of Bonner Park. And we all know that we don't have Bonner Park sized parks in every housing development. And so I think that this was thoughtfully considered. I appreciate the feedback that the public put in at the review phase and at this phase. And I'm happy to support the item tonight, and I encourage you all to do the same. Thank you.
Mr. Hess's motion is in order. Discussion on the motion. Ms. Hart?
Thank you. I concur with Jordan's comments tonight. And I would also like to just point out or make mention of the fact that we did have a number of comments come before us in our email, but also by talking with our constituents. Every development project that comes before our body is always contentious. And there's always a part of me anyway that wants to try and design by committee. But that is not necessarily the function of this particular body. That is done administratively and with the developer and his or her team. I wanted to just really kind of call out the concern about whether or not this is an affordable type of project. Because the author of our recent letter called that out, and I think it's worth commenting on. Today's prices are certainly not affordable by the standard of our average wages. And that is definitely a conundrum that we face. But the reality is the prices that we see for new construction is reflective of the rising costs of materials in the construction trades. and prevailing wages, because that's really important if we want to try to solve for the other side of the equation of affordability, and that's making sure that we have living wages. So those are going to go hand in hand. And then, of course, driving the bottom line is the cost of land. And every one of us that sells a home, we are capitalists at heart, because we're trying to capture the best price that we can get for the homes that we sell. So there's a whole complicated reason why prices get so expensive. Here on council, we are trying to move the needle as best as we possibly can to move things through our process as fast as we can to try and reduce the number of conditions, which ultimately would add to the price of a project. So we appreciate the feedback. We're doing all that we can. And I am full support of this particular project moving forward.
Ms. Becerra.
Thank you. I will support this subdivision or the first phase of it, let's say. I do share a lot of the concerns that were raised by a lot of my constituents in this area. And I guess I just ask the developer to be as good a neighbor as you can be. Show courtesy whenever you can. This is a 7-phase subdivision, so it's many, many years of constant construction and new people moving into the area. So I think that the more you can do to ease the congestion and the pain of changes in that area, the better we can all be. So thank you. I will support this motion.
Seeing no further discussion, we have had a public hearing. We'll have a roll call vote.
Thanks, Mayor Engen. Let's start this round with Becerra.
Yes.
Contos.
Yes.
Hart.
Yes.
Hess.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Masika.
Yes.
Van Lasberg.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
And Anderson.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your vote? It's 11 ayes and 1 absent.
And the motion is approved. We have no more public hearings this evening. I will pass on the communications from the mayor. We get general comments this evening with Ms. Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week I heard a story on NPR that just scared the living daylights out of me. As all of you know, mental and behavioral health issues are very paramount to me and most of us in this community. At one point, we typically averaged 1 in 5 people being affected by mental or behavioral health issues. That number since COVID has risen to 1 in 3. And even more scarily, the report said that 1 in 4 teenagers in the last 3 months has contemplated suicide. What we are going through as a nation, as a world community, is unprecedented in ways that we've never seen before. If you at all are concerned about a loved one of yours or you yourself, don't know where to turn, it's a common place to be. And when you open up the phone book and you see a alphabet soup after someone's name in the mental health field and you don't know where to start, I've been there, I know that pain. To that end, the county put together a task force on mental and behavioral health, which I got to co-lead on, and we created some support resources. Most importantly, should you ever feel suicidal, please feel free to reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That number is 1-800-273-8255. They will connect you with resources here in Missoula. Or you can go to the covid19.missoula.co. That is the county's website. And with all the different task forces, there's one there on mental and behavioral health specifically that can help get you connected, make sure that your loved ones are getting the care that they need. You are not alone in this. I bet every one of us around this table knows somebody that's being affected. This is the hardest thing I think I've ever gone through. And I just want you to know that I feel your pain. I'm here and I'm listening. Thank you.
Ms. Merritt.
Oh, along maybe a similar thought line, I wanted to say congratulations to all of the MCPS students and staff and administration and everyone for making it through the first semester of this school year. Having 2 teenagers in school, I can attest to how difficult it has been and how many adjustments everyone has had to make. And just the amount of work that I know all of the staff have put in is just tremendous. You guys have done a great job under incredibly difficult circumstances. So I just want to give a shout out to all those folks. And I hope that as we move into phase 2 of the school attendance, that everyone stays safe and everyone has the ability to make the choices that they need for their students. So thanks, everybody.
Mr. Contos.
I'll pass. Thank you.
Ms. Jones.
I'll pass. Thank you.
Mr. Nugent, I'm passing by you. Ms. West. Ms. Becerra.
I'll pass, thank you.
Ms. Cheryl.
Thanks.
Mr. Von Lossberg.
Pass, thanks.
Mr. Hess.
Thanks. I wasn't going to say anything, but the Missoula Moves to Amend group every year strikes a chord with me, and I wanted to thank them for their steadfast efforts for coming before us year after year, for continuing to raise an incredibly important issue. $14 billion spent on the last federal election is it's really it's broken. We've got to get a handle on that. I want to just read a couple of sentences from a opinion piece that I read this weekend from Ezra Klein. He says, democracy is designed as a feedback loop. Voters choose leaders, leaders govern, voters judge the result, and they either return the leaders to power or give their opponents a chance. That feedback loop is broken in American politics. It's broken because of gerrymandering, because of the Senate, because of the filibuster, because of the Electoral College, because we have declared money to be speech and allowed those with wealth to speak much more loudly than those without. And I just sincerely hope that we can come together and find a solution to that, to raise all voices and to fix that serious problem with our politics. And I want to commend that group for their efforts to continue to bring that before us and to raise public awareness.
Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much for the comments from my fellow council member, Mr. Hess. I saw that same quote this weekend, and it really resonated with me, so I really appreciate that. And I would just encourage folks to pay attention to what's happening at the Montana State Legislature. They are 3 weeks into their legislative session, and without getting into too much commentary on what they are trying to do, it's rolling back rights for people all across the state, and elections have consequences. And I really encourage folks to pay attention, engage. Your voice matters. It's an odd session with it being hybrid in person, but important, substantial, harmful things are being passed, and we all need to be engaging and paying attention and reaching out to the legislators to make sure that our voices are heard. And so I encourage folks to do that. There might be folks in our community who don't feel comfortable reaching out, and we need to speak up for minority populations and the LGBTQ population, and for women's rights and workers' rights, and a lot is at stake in this next legislative session that's happening right now. So I encourage folks to engage and pay attention. Thanks so much.
Ms. Vasika.
I'll pass, thanks.
Well, thank you all. We have no committee reports this evening, ladies and gentlemen. We do have one item of new business. That's our standing legislative report. You all received the lobbyist report and are able to track what we are following. With regard to the legislature, the city of Missoula was served with a lawsuit today based on the Missoula City Council's ordinance banning vape shops. I was served with that lawsuit this morning, had a conversation with our chief administrative officer, a couple of council members, and Mr. Nugent. Based on my conversation with Mr. Nugent, we believe that the legislature will likely take action that will moot our ordinance, render it null and void. We have an opportunity to rack up some legal bills here, I think, to no good end. We would like to stipulate as a function of that lawsuit that we will not enforce the provisions of that ordinance until May 1st. That should provide opportunity for the legislature to do its thing, have a much better sense of what's afoot, and not require plaintiff's attorney to engage in injunctive or other actions that are likely to, again, incur more fees and increase liability for the city. So unless I see an objection from any of you, that is the way we will proceed. And Mr. Nugent can get that handled for us. Seeing none, we will forge ahead. Any other questions or comments with regard to the legislature? We are, as you can see from lobbyist report, following many quickly moving bills with varying degrees of benefit to the community. In many cases, we don't believe that there is benefit and are there to oppose. Cases where we believe there is benefit to the residents we serve, we're there to support, or in some cases amend. So anything else on the legislature? Ms. Vasika.
Thanks. I'm sorry if I missed it, but the vape ban ordinance, that's being delayed until when? When was that?
May 1st.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Merritt?
I guess the question just crossed my mind. Will we be getting an update from Mr. McDonald, like around transmittal time? I'm sorry, could someone maybe refresh me on that?
Yeah, we sure could. Happy to do that. And John could certainly join us via Zoom. I would suggest that he's exhausted at this point, just trying to take care of business. But yeah, I think transmittal would be a great time for that review.
Thanks.
Yeah, we'll know much more about what's afoot for sure. All right. We'll make a note of that and make it happen. Anything else on the legislature this evening? Seeing none, do we have any additional items to be referred? Seeing none of those, any miscellaneous communications, reports, petitions, or announcements? Seeing none, as always, I thank you for your service, and we will be adjourned.